All right, we're back with Proclus on his on the Timaeus, his commentary on the Timaeus, and we had just kind of gotten into the beginning of Timaeus's speech. We started by looking at the question of like the being or becoming of the world. We got some notions of intelligence, how the different aspects kind of join together, the sensible and intelligible. And now we're at the next quote from the dialogue. So, everything, however, which is generated is from necessity generated by a certain cause, for it is perfectly impossible that it should have generation without a cause. Proclus. Timaeus, in a manner truly conformable to the geometric method, after the definitions, assumes these axioms. So we had definitions of being. Okay, well, he's going to explain it probably better than I would. For having said what being and what that which is generated are, he adds these other common conceptions. So these will be axioms that the rest of what he's saying depends on. That the thing which is generated is entirely generated by a cause, but that the thing which is not generated by a cause cannot have generation. The one being the kind of corollary of the other. From these axioms also, it is evident that to diaireton does not signify the dividing method, but that the hypotheses are to be defined. Diairesis is division, but here, I'm not sure which word. Does that word appear in the quote? Not sure. So yeah, like the basic dialectical operations, we had a division, definition, analysis, synthesis. I feel like we went over that quite a bit in one of the other commentaries. I think Damascus defined them as kind of grouped broadly into a collecting and dividing, or ascending and descending method. But here, diairesis is taking on a slightly different meaning. So, but we're getting these axioms at least. Okay. For the assertion that everything which is generated is necessarily generated by a certain cause, and that it is impossible for it to have generation without a cause, and also the following axiom, that what is generated according to an eternal paradigm is rendered beautiful, all these being axioms, are to be considered as belonging to the term diaireisteon, and not to be parts of division. Okay, so the division into, let's see. Division is like distinguishing species under a genus, or dividing up into the parts. So we shouldn't consider these axioms, which we arrive at, like I guess you would get to axioms through a kind of division process, like distilling down into individual ideas that make up the topic. These are not parts of the division process, but it's another idea, dioristeon. So I don't know if he'll clarify that distinction more, but since, however, one of the present axioms is more clear, but the other is less known and clear, hence Timaeus places the one as the middle term, but the other as the conclusion. For the axiom, everything which is generated is necessarily generated by a certain cause, is the conclusion. But the axiom, it is entirely impossible that it should have generation without a cause, is the middle, in order that the syllogism may be categoric and may be in the first figure as follows. It is impossible for that which is generated to be generated without a cause, but this is necessarily generated by a certain cause. Everything, therefore, which is generated is from necessity generated by a certain cause. Okay. Let me reinterpret the syllogism for a second. It is impossible for that which is generated to be generated without a cause, but this is necessarily generated by a certain cause. Everything, therefore, which is generated is from necessity generated by a certain cause. The syllogism isn't obvious because there's no, I guess, we could rephrase it, all things generated are from a cause, rather than the negative formulation here. All things generated are from a cause. But then this is necessarily generated by a cause. All A are B. The syllogism is not actually really straightforward. Does anyone else want to try to reformulate this in the letter notation that we're familiar with? Everything, therefore, it's in the first figure. Everything, therefore, which is generated is from necessity generated by a certain cause. I feel like this is... Yeah, please.
Like, all generated things are caused things. All caused things. I can't figure out the second term.
Mm-hmm.
The term is all generated things are caused things. So it just seems like a tautology.
I think it is. Yeah, I think he's just restating. So, okay. Kind of strange that Proclus would seemingly mess this up like this, but we'll just keep going. For it is better to collect what is said after this manner, as the divine Iamblichus also thinks we ought, than to make, as some other persons do, the syllogism to be hypothetical. But how is the middle more known than the conclusion? For it is evident that a thing must necessarily be, which it is impossible should not be. Okay, if it's impossible that something should not be, then it must necessarily be. And that it is impossible a thing should not be, which necessarily is. So he's saying, like, these seem equally evident. So why is the middle, which is the B aspect, all things generated with a cause. All things are generated from a cause. Okay, I don't want to fret over this too much and keep it going, but for it is evident that a thing must necessarily be, which it is impossible should not be, and that it is impossible a thing should not be, which necessarily is. They seem symmetrical, seem equally evident. One, though, is being treated, according to Proclus's interpretation, as less evident and used in the deduction, or in a certain respect, each of these is the same. But frequently it is not known that a thing necessarily is, but that it is impossible for it not to be is known. So that something is impossible not to be is somehow more evident than that a thing has necessary being. For instance, let's see. Thus, for instance, the physician says to his patient, "It is necessary you should be nourished," and he will in a less degree persuade the sick man. But if he says, "It is impossible to live without being nourished," this will now compel the patient to take nutriment. I guess because if you just say the necessity of it, it's not clear where the necessity comes from. You just kind of have to take it as a, axiom. But then if he says you can't live without this, then the necessity of doing it will be more clear somehow. But that also seems conditional rather than categorical. It's impossible to live without being nourished. Therefore, it's necessary that you must take nourishment in order to live. Still seems hypothetical, not categorical. And again, death is necessary through a certain cause. for it is impossible not to die, i.e., to avoid death. And it is necessary to give money that is owing to a tyrant, for it is impossible not to give it. So if you say it's necessary, you must give to the tyrant, they could say, like, why? But if you say, like, you cannot avoid giving to the tyrant, then that's like, well, I guess that's the boat I'm in, kind of thing. So, all right. And in a great variety of other instances, you may, in a similar manner, see that one of these is more obscure, the other more known, though both may appear to signify the same thing. How, therefore, in the words before us, is the one clearer than the other? For what if in some things this should be true, but in others not? May we not say that here also it is easy to learn how that which is generated, when it is separated from its cause, is powerless and imbecile? Okay, for not being able to preserve itself, neither is it connected by itself. But as it derives from its cause alone its preservation and connection, if it is separated from its cause, it is evident that it becomes of itself powerless, and being dissipated, departs into non-entity, which also demonstrates that what is generated cannot be generated without a cause. Okay, so if you imagine the negation of its cause, you imagine at the same time the negation of the thing itself. So that's more evident than just saying it's the cause of generated things is a necessary feature of them. Okay, for if it is generated by a certain maker. Hence, it is rightly said in the Philebus that what is generated is made, but that which makes is the cause to that which is made of its being made. If, however, this be the case, it is either generated by itself or by another, but if by itself, it passes into the same with perpetual being. And thus, that which is generated and that which always is will be the same, and a generated nature will rank among things that have an eternal subsistence. Right. So if that cause is in itself, then the distinction between generated and ungenerated natures breaks down. But if it is not generated by itself, it is entirely generated by another, for it is necessary that what is generated should be generated by something, if it is that which is generated and not real being. For not connecting itself, nor making itself in energy, it will suffer this from something else, and being itself, by itself, imbecile, it will derive power from another. Farther still, though the same thing should both act and suffer, so far indeed as it is that which suffers, it suffers from another, and so far as it is effective, it operates on another. So it's not simply that something is caused by another, or causes itself, or is a cause in general. Things can be both effects and causes. That also which is generated, so far as it is generated, suffers. But if it suffers from something else, for it is not naturally adapted to generate itself. For it would be before it is generated. For it would be before it is generated, and would be in energy prior to subsisting in capacity. For it is necessary that what operates should operate in energy on that which is in capacity. Plato, therefore, conjoining that which is generated to cause, which he does in the conclusion, very properly uses the term from necessity. For firmness and stability, accompanied by persuasion, accede to that which is generated from its cause. Just as he says in the Statesman, that a renovated immortality is imparted to the world from its father. When the kind of cosmogonic cycle resets and people are born again from the earth as opposed to dying and going into the earth, entropy is reversed like a clock being wound up. Okay, so basically the necessity that something generated is generated from a cause is from the nature of generation. If something is not something is not caused by another, then it must be caused by itself. And if it's caused by itself, then it's never alienated from the cause of its being, and therefore it'll be eternal, and so then it's not generated. So if it's generated, it must be generated by some other. That's necessary. That the PSR holds that like things must have some reason why they are as they are, which applies equally to eternal things. That I don't think is shown to be necessary in Proclus's examination here. But it is an axiom after all. But separating that which is generated from its cause, which he does in the middle, he uses the term impossible for that which is generated, surveyed by itself, is inefficacious and imperfect. Moreover, in employing the word cause, he indicates the uniform power of the demiurgic principle, calling the demiurgic cause not simply that which gives subsistence to another thing. For Socrates says that the good is the cause of intelligibles, but it is not the demiurgic cause of them. Okay, so the cause in the demiurgic sense is not simply what gives subsistence to them. For the demiurgic is attributed to generation, as Plato says in the Philebus, that the demiurgic refers to that which is generated. Okay, so the demiurgic cause doesn't just give subsistence, but gives subsistence to generated natures. Hence, prior to the world, there are different causes of different things, but there are not demiurgic causes of generated natures. So again, demiurgic causes are specifically to generated natures, and prior to the world, there aren't demiurgic causes because there's no generated natures prior to the world. If, therefore, there are many demiurgic causes, there is also one such cause prior to the many. There are many... Okay, so all causes of generated natures are demiurgic, and so we have a series of a thing, therefore there is a monad of that series, the one preeminent demiurgic cause. For in short, if that which is generated is one, union must accede to it from its cause. So all generation, or the whole of generation, it must become what it is by one whole demiurgic cause. The whole demiurge of wholes, right? Which in the dialogue is symbolized by Timaeus, I think. And then, what were the other three characters? Quiz time. What do the other characters symbolize? The demiurgic triad. What were the other three? It was like demiurge of wholes, which I think is Timaeus. And then, well, the characters were Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. But what do they symbolize? I think it was like demiurgic intellect. And then two others. Socrates stood, I think, for demiurgic intellect. Demiurgic, I don't know, life with Poseidon or something, and demiurgic. Do we remember?
Was Hades a demiurge of material things?
Could be. Sounds...
And was that Critias?
Yeah, who would have been Poseidon then? I guess maybe Critias was the one equated to Poseidon, because he does tell like the Atlantis story, so he's associated in the text with Poseidon.
Right.
And then Hermocrates, I guess, would be Hades. But anyway, if you know in the live chat, go ahead and fill us in. But okay, let's keep going here. For in short, if that which is generated is one, union must accede to it from its cause, and therefore it is much more necessary that its cause should be uniform and connective of multitude, in order that what is generated may become one conformably to the union pre-existing in its cause. And thus much concerning these particulars. It is here, however, usual to enumerate all the causes and the differences of causes according to Aristotle, nor is this done immethodologically. Okay, so he's referring to like his writing of the commentary. He is very formulaic. There are conventions for what topics are brought up in the course of a Timaeus commentary, which just speaks to like how many Timaeus commentaries there must have been. We've learned of several of them, and the introduction, the Tarrant introduction to the work, was especially useful in that, looking at like who has commented on the Timaeus. So, all right. For it is requisite to say that every cause is either essential or accidental, and this proximately or remotely, and that these subsist in a twofold respect, either simple or complex. Okay, so we have essential or accidental cause, proximate or remote, simple or complex. All these likewise have a twofold subsistence, as they are either in capacity or energy, for thus the multitude of them may be surveyed. For on account of the essential and accidental, there are two modes of the explication of causes. So we can look at every cause either as essential or accidental, but on account of these being attributed in a twofold respect, either proximately or remotely, there are four modes. So if then we look at each cause in terms of essential or accidental, and proximate or remote, then we have four ways of looking at each of the four causes. If we're looking at Aristotle's four causes, Proclus includes the paradigmatic cause, but doesn't yet include the instrumental explicitly, I believe. So I don't know if he would include in this outline of causes formal, material, efficient, final, and paradigmatic or not. But in any case, using these two dichotomies applying to each of the causes, we have four ways of looking at each. And again, on account of all these subsisting in a twofold respect, either as simple or complicated with each other, there are 8 modes. So each of the four causes, or 5, depending on how he treats it, will have 8 ways of looking at it. Through these also being twofold, either in energy or in capacity, there are 16 modes. But on account of causes being predicated in a fourfold respect according to Aristotle, but according to Plato, causes subsisting in a threefold, and causes also, though in a different way, in a threefold respect. Okay, actually, so this indicates that Proclus was aware of the 6 causes. I just think we haven't seen him outline the instrumental, but here he numbers them 6. 3. Here's another quiz. So what are the 3 genuine causes, and what are the 3 causes in the Neoplatonic scheme? Okay. Does someone want to give it a shot, or what are the 6 causes in general? Does someone want to just list them, and then we'll divide those?
The material cause, final cause, formal cause, efficient cause, paradigmatic cause. Actually, I'm not recalling.
And instrumentals, the 6.
Instrumental.
And the genuine causes are efficient, which is the mode of causation that the demiurge engages in. Like, properly speaking, there are analogies to efficient cause in the mundane world, but like true efficient cause is the making, well, like really makes the thing. So efficient cause, paradigmatic cause, like the forms cause their images in a genuine way, that's true causation, and final cause, the goal that something is approaching, is genuine cause. Material cause is a cause. It's a necessary condition of something coming into being, but like matter is passive, so it makes sense it would be kind of a cause, but not like a true cause. And then instrumental, of course, the instrument by which something is done is a necessary condition of its being, but it's not like the thing that actually directly causes another thing. And mundane formal will also be a con cause, because it's like, it is like when you're talking about the shape of a mundane thing, it's necessary for the thing to be what it is, but it isn't what makes the thing what it is. Instead, that's in the paradigm. I believe I'm getting that right. Okay, so we have back here, on account of causes being predicated in a fourfold respect according to Aristotle, but according to Plato, causes subsisting in a threefold. Oh yeah, here. These causes are the producing, the paradigmatic, and the final, and the con causes are matter, material causes, and form. Oh yeah, so instrumental isn't listed. So there is a difference there. Yeah, Proclus never directly mentions instrumental cause. Instead, material causes fill that sixth role. So I guess someone recognized there's kind of a redundancy in matter and material causes both being con causes. So I hope he outlines what he means by material causes, because that term I don't think we've run into yet. All right. And con causes also, though in a different way in a threefold respect. Hence, according to the former, there will be 64 modes of causes, but according to the latter, there will be 48 modes of causes, and the same number of con causes. So, causes sensu lato for Plato, there will be 96 of them, and for Aristotle, 64. But then if we're just talking about causes, strictly speaking, 48 for Plato. For thus the assumption will become perfectly methodical, though that of Plato is usually omitted by the interpreters, who, having enumerated causes according to Aristotle, inquire how it is said that everything which is generated by a certain cause. We, however, omitting all this superfluous discussion, say that Timaeus is here speaking about the effective cause. Hence, he uses the words by a certain cause, for the term by which is adapted to that which is effective. Yeah, created by. Whereas, I mean, the image is created by the form in a certain way, but it's probably more accurate to say the form, or the particular participates of the form, or that the form, emanates the particular or something. And then with the final cause, the final cause draws a thing to itself and is the cause of action, but you wouldn't say caused by in the same way. So I guess I sort of understand what he means. To say that something is made by something is especially adapted to the efficient cause. But he adds a certain cause, for the intellect of the universe, soul and nature, are said to be producing causes, and prior to these, other causes have this dignity. Yet as many things are generated, and there are many causes, though not of each particular, the word certain is very properly added. For each particular is generated by a certain cause, and not by all causes. These things, therefore, are manifest. This axiom, however, is entirely derided by the Epicureans, who make the whole world and the most divine of visible natures to be the work of chance, but by the Aristotelians, for the name alone, it is thought worthy of reverence. For the name alone, for they say indeed that what is generated is entirely generated by a certain cause, but they undesignedly make the cause to be causeless when they enumerate chance with causes. For chance is this very thing, the causeless. But Plato alone, following the Pythagoreans, so Aristotle does admit chance as a thing, right? Like in the posterior analytics, when he's talking about like things, or this might be in the topics. I don't remember, but he's talking about what is always the case, what is sometimes the case, and what is the case for the most part. And I think in those matters, he brings in the idea of things that are by chance or things that are by necessity. So Aristotle factors in chance, and I guess Plato doesn't. For chance is this very thing, the causeless, but Plato alone, following the Pythagoreans, rightly says that everything which is generated by a cause, and places over generated natures fate and God. For though generated natures are many and separated from each other, and which also on this account are generated from many causes, producing in a different manner, yet there is one cause, collective and connective, of the makers, in order that there may be nothing in vain or adventitious in the universe. For it is not proper that beings should be governed badly. Those are the words of Aristotle from the 12th book of his Metaphysics. So I guess Proclus is quoting Aristotle to show that like Aristotle should have known better than to incorporate the idea of chance. But you could defend Aristotle by saying he was talking about chance epistemically, not ontologically. Things can seem to happen according to chance, but that just means we don't know the cause. Let there, however, be one ruler, one cause of all things, one providence, and one chain of beings. Let there be also, together with the monad, an appropriate multitude, many kings, various causes, a multiform providence, and a different order. Yet everywhere multitude has a co-arrangement about the monad, things various about that which is simple, things multiform about that which is uniform, and things different about that which is common, in order that a truly golden chain may have dominion over all things, and that all things may be constituted in a becoming manner. Where did the phrase "the golden chain" first come from? Would someone mind looking that up? Is this a Platonic image in the first place, or interesting? All right. For if, as Aristotle says, all things are co-arranged with a view to form, it is necessary that there should be a cause of the coordination. Okay. For if, as Aristotle says, all things are co-arranged with a view to form, it is necessary that there should be a cause of the coordination, and that nothing which is in vain should have a place in the universe, but that what appears to be in vain to a part should be advantageous to the whole. These observations, however, have been made elsewhere. Yeah, so if things are co-arranged with a view to the form of the whole, then there should be a cause of the coordination, and nothing can happen according to chance. So at the level of fate, all things happen in a necessitated way. Okay. Brian, Homer mentions a golden chain connecting heaven and earth in the Iliad. Cool. So that's where it comes from. But what is said in the Philebus appears to be more universal than this axiom, viz., that everything which is mixed subsists from a certain cause of the mixture. For if things which are mingled are not to be mingled casually, it is necessary there should be one cause collective of separated natures, and imparting union to mingled form. So that kind of causation is higher than demiurgic efficient cause, which causes generated natures. So the principle of mixture is associated with the cause of intelligible natures as well, which makes it more universal. This cause, however, is in one mixture God, in another intellect, in another soul, in another nature, and in another a certain art imitating nature. So the principle of causation more generally than the demiurgic cause applies at various levels. Indeed, everything which is generated is mingled, but not everything which is mingled is generated. Intelligibles are also mingled of the limit and the unlimited. For the first of beings, bound and infinity, subsist mingled with each other. From these, therefore, Plato says other things and also bodies derive their subsistence. Okay, so bodies and other things are derived from the mixture of bound and infinite. All that is said here, therefore, is analogous to all that is said in the Philebus, viz., the demiurge to the one, form to bound, matter to the infinite, and that which is generated to that which is mixed. It's just applying at a lower level than what's discussed in the Philebus. Because remember, the scopos of the Philebus was the one of animal natures, according to Timaeus. But according to Proclus, it was the one in a wider sense. So it makes sense that for, again, Proclus, I'm going to try to change my pronunciation. For Proclus, the topic of the Philebus was like maybe all the way up into the first hypostasis even. Whereas for Damascus, it's going to be at like a much lower level, having to do with the intelligible animal and lower, which is above the level of the demiurge. But the latter are more universal than the former, because the latter, viz., the one, bound, the infinite, and that which is mixed, are beheld in all things, but the former, viz., the demiurge form, matter, and that which is generated, are seen in mundane natures only. For intellect is mixed as being knowledge, and as possessing infinite power, and also soul, as being at one and the same time impartible and partible. Hence, a certain cause is the cause of that which is generated, just as that which is generated is a certain mixture, and not every mixture. By which also it is evident that the demiurge is subordinate to the one, since he produces indeed a mixture, but a mixture which is generated. For since the causes of the world are these, the final, the paradigmatic, the effective, the organic, the formal, and the material. The organic. Interesting. Oh, that is instrumental, because organon means instrument. There's an omission here in the original of to organikon. Okay, so he's saying Taylor's footnote seems to imply that Taylor has interpolated the organic or instrumental cause. So that's still not proof positive that Proclus himself. It'd be nice to compare the Tarrant translation here, which we could do, but it would be kind of a pain. For since the causes of the world are these, the final, the paradigmatic, the effective, the instrumental, the formal, and the material, Timaeus indeed points out to us afterwards, from reason and demonstration, the final cause, but delivers the instrumental, the formal, and the material causes and the material cause from the former before mentioned axioms. Okay, the con causes we can know derivatively from the higher axioms, but we get to we get to the final cause later. For if the universe is not real being, but that which is generated, it is a form participated by matter, and by the instrumental, formal, and material causes is proximately moved. But Timaeus unfolds to us the effective cause from what is now said. So we move from the con causes, which are easier to establish from the axioms, and then moves to the final and effective. For if the universe is generated, there is an effective cause of it, and he unfolds the paradigmatic cause in what will be said afterwards. For if the world is beautiful, it was generated according to an eternal paradigm, so that through these axioms, investigating for us the causes of the universe, he delivers all things in order, and the hypotheses afford him this utility. Okay. We'll go ahead and start. It'd be nice to start on a lemma next time, but we might just have to kind of revisit. We'll go ahead and keep going for now, though. When, therefore, an artificer, looking to that which possesses an invariable sameness of subsistence, and always employing a certain paradigm of this kind, expresses in his work the idea and power of it, then it is necessary that the whole should be a beautiful effect. But when he looks to that which is generated, employing a generated paradigm, then his work will not be beautiful. So, and you can imagine how that would like appeal to the artistic intuitions of Greeks and just people in general, where when the artist has a kind of necessary internal consistent concept, like, you know, an idea of the gods or a god in particular, and then sculpts it or then paints it, then it's going to be beautiful. But if he just comes up with something arbitrarily, a generated paradigm, then it's not going to have that necessary beauty. Proclus, this also is in continuity with what has been said. For the paradigmatic is investigated after the effective cause, except that the before-mentioned axioms contribute to our discovering that there is a demiurgic cause of the universe, but the present axioms do not contribute to the discovery that there is a paradigmatic cause of the world, but to the knowledge of what kind of a paradigm it is, whether eternal or generated. For from there being an effective cause, it follows that there is also a paradigm, either pre-existing in the maker himself, or external to him, and either superior or inferior to, or of the same rank with him. For universally, that which makes, being extended to a certain form, makes that which it wishes to insert in the thing made. This therefore follows. So, to make, as an artist, there is necessarily a paradigm by which the thing is made, because we impart form into the matter. The form pre-existed a thing made, and so that archetype or paradigm was in us as the artist, or superior to us, or inferior to us. It is necessary, however, to find, and so we looked at a couple options. So either the paradigm is at the level of the demiurge or above, in which case it's eternal and the effect will be beautiful, or it's below the level of the demiurge and generated by a demiurgic cause, and therefore will not be beautiful. It is necessary, however, to find that which is next in order, viz., whether the mundane paradigm is eternal or generated. But to this, so the necessity of paradigmatic cause is interpreted as following from the existence of demiurgic cause, which was established in the previous lemma. So we're not looking to establish that paradigmatic cause is, because it's already implied. Instead, we're looking at what specifically is the paradigm of this universe. But to this, the proposed axioms contribute, and the whole of what is said will be truly consentaneous to itself. Consentaneous? Expressing agreement, done or made by the consent of all, consentaneously. All right. And the whole of what is said will be truly consentaneous to itself. If the universe is generated, there is a demiurge of it. If there is a demiurge of the universe, there is also a paradigm. And if indeed that which is generated is beautiful, it was generated on account of an eternal paradigm. But if it was not, that which is generated is not beautiful, so that a continued syllogism such as the following is produced. The world was generated, everything generated has a demiurgic cause, everything having a demiurge has also a paradigmatic cause, the world therefore has both a demiurgic and paradigmatic cause, and as in the first axiom, there were two hypotheses, what perpetual being is, and what that is which is generated, and two other in the second axiom, viz. Everything which is generated has a cause, and that which has not a cause is not generated. Thus also in these there are two common conceptions. That which is generated on account of an intelligible paradigm is beautiful. That which is generated on account of a generated paradigm is not beautiful. Each also of these is perfectly true. For he who makes on account of the intelligible, either similarly or dissimilarly, imitates it. And if indeed similarly, he makes the imitation beautiful, for there that which is primarily beautiful subsists. If we remember back to the Olympiodorus commentary on the Gorgias, the fine was associated with intelligible natures. So the beauty is really the presence of form. So that's the necessary connection here. If you make on account of an eternal paradigm, you are instilling the form, which is real, in the thing, and the more formal something is, the more beautiful, the more material, the more ugly. And so if you create a generated paradigm that's not eternal, that has more of an admixture of matter, even in the paradigm, it's a more material paradigm and thus a more ugly paradigm, because beauty is kind of just form. For there that which is primarily beautiful subsists, but if dissimilarly, he does not make on account of the intelligible, for on the contrary, he falls off from the similitude. And he who makes anything on account of that which is generated, if he truly directs his attention to it, evidently does not make that which is beautiful. For this very thing is full of dissimilitude, and is not that which is primarily beautiful, whence that which is generated on account of it is much more separated from beauty. Hence Phidias also, who made the celebrated statue of Jupiter, would not have arrived at the conception of the Jupiter in Homer if he had looked at a generated resemblance of the god. Why is Homer mentioned here, and who is Phidias? Okay. Ancient Greek sculptor, painter, and architect, active in the 5th century BC. His statue of Zeus at Olympia, the huge one, was one of the 7 wonders of the world. Okay. But how is he related to Homer? He would not have arrived at the conception of the Jupiter in Homer if he had looked at a generated resemblance of the god. Proclus treats Homer as inspired, although Plato sometimes seems to criticize Homer. That's because in the ideal state where that critique happens, we are above the cathartic effects that the poetry then extant in the Greek world was aimed at. So Proclus explains in his commentaries on the Republic, or his essays on the Republic, that the playwrights, poets, I guess including Homer, are good for people of a mixed nature where they have to bring their passions up. So to affect the passions that we have, there has to be resemblances between the gods of literature and ourselves, even though in themselves, the true gods don't have those sorts of passions, like Plato says. But it's just a result of where we are, that's the image of the god that we need to commune with. Whereas ex hypothesi, in the ideal state, people are all elevated beyond that necessity. And so they could have like more philosophically refined notions of the gods. But here he says he wouldn't have arrived at the conception of the Jupiter in Homer if he had looked at a generated resemblance of the god, implying that the concept of Zeus in Homer is the legitimate one, perhaps. And if he had been able to extend himself to the intellectual Jupiter, it is evident that he would have rendered his work still more beautiful. Oh, so I guess the Jupiter in Homer is depicting a true archetypal divinity, but it's a mixed kind of divinity, kind of suspended, I guess, between the intellectual and the sensible. So that's a bit of like information about Homer's theology that students in the school in Athens would have known, because remember, in their curriculum they studied Homer and various Greek poets, I think before even they started on Aristotle. That was part of like the general education, and so they would probably have like doctrines about Homer's theology kind of solidified. So maybe that's assumed here. Just that's speculation though. Okay, so, and if he had been able to extend himself to the intellectual Jupiter, it is evident that he would have rendered his work still more beautiful. For, from the paradigm indeed, beauty, or the want of beauty, accedes to the image. But from the maker, similitude or dissimilitude to the archetype is derived. So paradigmatic cause gives beauty to the image, gives form to the image, and the efficient cause, the demiurgic cause, either hits that mark or doesn't hit that mark. The paradigmatic cause kind of operates flawlessly. The paradigms always emanate their form. But the maker who actually applies the paradigm to matter does it successfully or unsuccessfully. With reference to both, however, the image is said to be the image of the paradigm, but the work and effect of the maker. On this account also Timaeus, when he speaks of the paradigm, conjoins with it its image, for he says, "Thus therefore we must speak concerning the paradigm and its image." But when he speaks of the demiurge, he conjoins with him his work, for he then says, "Of whom I am the demiurge and father of works." Since, however, paradigms are triple, for there is either an eternal paradigm of an eternal thing, or an eternal paradigm of a generated thing, or a generated paradigm of a generated thing. Hence, when there is an eternal paradigm of an eternal thing, that which is entirely eternal is the paradigm of that which is so in a certain respect, as intellect of soul. So intellect is the paradigm of soul, and soul is in a certain respect eternal. So that's eternal causing the eternal. But when there is an eternal paradigm of a generated nature, this paradigm also is in a certain respect eternal, i.e., according to infinite time. So the soul is the paradigm of generated natures, the world soul of the world body. And when there is an entirely generated paradigm of a generated nature, this falls off from eternity. So the logoi of nature, Numenius treats as eternal or perpetual, but I guess by the time of Proclus, that was reconsidered, and there will be logoi of nature that are not themselves eternal. Actually, that's not really been established clearly. I guess it would be safer to say that when a human has a logoi or paradigm, or logos paradigm of the thing that he's making, that is not an eternal thing. So like a chair, a table, that's a generated paradigm of a generated thing, and so that wholly participates of generation, not eternity. For it is not possible that what is essentially generated should be productive of eternal natures. The former, therefore, participate from their paradigms of beauty and order as being imitations of a stable nature, but the latter, as deriving their subsistence from things mutable and in motion, are not beautiful, and yet are not entirely deformed, but are alone manifested through the negation of beauty. Well, that's interesting. So similar to how matter kind of has a privatory existence, the beauty of wholly generated things are not totally devoid of form, but it's the negation of the true form by which they exist. So I think the meaning is their subsistence takes place through their departure from the true form. They're not entirely deformed, but what they are because of a decline from some true form. So it's through the negation of beauty/form that they have what beauty they do, things that are wholly generated. Such things, therefore, as are the beautiful progeny of art, are not beautiful when compared with the beauty which accedes from an eternal paradigm to sensible paradigms. And perhaps on this account also, Timaeus does not say that what derives its subsistence according to a generated paradigm is entirely deformed, but only that it is not beautiful. For that which is constituted according to artificial reason does not subsist conformably to an eternal form, since there are not in intellect paradigms of things artificial. People need to know that that's Neoplatonic doctrine, because everyone, when they talk about the forms, always says like, oh yeah, so there's some form of the table. It's like, no, expressly no, according to Proclus. Hence, they are not simply beautiful, nor yet are they deformed, because, in short, they derive their subsistence according to reason, or that productive principle which is in the mind of the artist. That these axioms, therefore, are true, we may, through these observations, be reminded. Okay. And we'll go ahead and stop here. Put a line through that. Awesome. Any comments on the reading today? All right. Yep, some good stuff. It looks like approximately halfway through this thing. So we're getting there. And then after this, we'll have to go to the Parmenides. We will reset the curriculum while we're still doing this. As soon as I get fiber optic hooked up down at the land. Today I'm in Thayer. I guess I shouldn't say specifically what town, but it's like 5 people watch these videos, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, once I get hooked up down there, I'll start doing more streams. We'll do more courses and stuff, and it'll be good. But that's it for today.